Lisa here, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this first impressions walk through the Tarot of the Crone by Ellen Lorenzi Prince. This deck in front of me here is currently out of print, but I have heard through the grapevine that this is going to be coming back into print, I believe, on Ellen Lorenzi Prince's website. So that is going to be, well, I don't know if it's her website. No, it's printed through arnellart.com. So I think that is actually where you're going to want to go to learn more about this deck. This one is one that a lot of people had been talking about for quite a while, and I ended up sort of deciding to wait on it. And then, of course, it went out of print. And then sometime later, I actually managed to get a hold of a copy of the Dark Goddess Tarot and fell in love with that deck, which is also by Ellen Lorenzi Prince, and that just made me look at this deck a little bit differently. So this past March of 2020, I was able to trade with somebody for this deck, and I'm really excited to have the first, is it the first edition? First or second, whatever the most recent edition is, I suppose. I think it's only first. But I wanted to share it with you. I'm really excited to be working with it soon, but in the meantime, yeah, I just wanted to take you guys on a little tour so that when it comes back into print, you can decide if you would like to get a copy for yourself or not. So I love the box. It is a sturdy two-piece box, just like the other Arnell Art decks that I have received in the past. I should point out that it's a pretty plain box, but it's nice and sturdy. There's no thumb cutouts, but I haven't had any trouble opening and closing the box. That said, I do find sometimes with the deck boxes that don't have any thumb cutouts that if the deck box is empty, it can sometimes be a little trickier. So I'm not going to close it all the way for now until the deck is back in it. Let's see, there's a couple of art cards here from Arnell Art, and the backings of this deck are literally just a plain black. As far as the size, see, I have a standard sized deck nearby here, so let me just grab this. This is the Illusory Tarot. I already did a walkthrough on this one, but let's just take a look at sizing here. So we're looking at something that is a little wider and a little shorter than a standard tarot deck. I actually really like this size. I find it to be really easy to handle, and the cardstock is pretty glossy. But yeah, so there's just a couple of these art cards. Well, this is the title card for the deck. And then this is just the Arnell Art card. And it does come with a guidebook. We'll take a look at this more in the end, but it is a little bit more, I would say, substantial than the book that came with, the little white book that came with the Dark Goddess Tarot. So it's got a little bit of a chunkiness to it. So I'm going to zoom us in, and we're just going to go card by card here and take a look at the Tarot of the Crone. Let's make sure we're zoomed in pretty good. Pull us out a little because I tend to like to pick up the cards and look at them. So our first card here is the Fool. And I find this really interesting. It's like we're looking at the back of a cloaked figure, and there's just this tiny little star shape in the middle of the cloak. You get this idea almost that we're behind a figure who's about to like leap off of a cliff, almost like a flying squirrel or something. I know that sounds kind of strange, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. Our Magician, and we have this sort of almost cat that ate the canary kind of looking figure here. Somebody who looks a little smug, a little sure of themselves. I think I see a little more of the shadow here, and some mischief. I love this Priestess. I love that she seems to be both in or surrounded by standing stones, as well as almost part standing stone herself. I think that's really powerful. I love this Empress. She's so voluptuous and comforting. The Emperor. This is really interesting because we have this very strong, stable structure here. There's definitely a symbol of power, but we have all of these bodies, all of these people that, or even animals that may have been a part of building up that power, or maybe a part of supporting that power, which I think is really interesting to look at when we're looking at the Emperor. I really like this nesting doll idea of tradition, which is the Hierophant card. We get this idea of sort of tradition passed down. We look at lineage here, and in this case, like a matrilineage. Love that. This is a potent Lover's card because it's crossroads. It's very much highlighting the idea of choice, of coming to a turning point in your path. Oh my gosh, my dog is like, hello, you should be petting me right now. The Chariot. This is great. So much personality in that card. Justice is the spider. I've seen these sort of references before. This makes really good sense to me. Our Hermit. You get this idea of almost somebody who's going to be going on a quest of some kind or a journey. I adore the labyrinth as the wheel. I think that just makes a whole lot of sense for a number of reasons. I like that you have the center labyrinth here, and then you also get the idea that there was an outer, more complicated labyrinth just to get to the central labyrinth. Strength, and we have this woman as part of a snake or cobra. Oh, this sacrifice card for the Hanged Man is really potent. Death. I think I'm bumping my camera a little. I'm going to try not to do that. We have sort of this yawny area is coffin shaped, as well as we have the outer coffin shape here, and these really bold colors. Very much transition for sure. But you also get this idea of, obviously, when one thing ends, something else it begins. There's this idea of both death and rebirth in this card. I'm going to see if I can shift my camera slightly so it might stop wobbling so much. So it might wobble for a second. And then hopefully we'll have it cleared up. Okay, I think it'll be better now. Let's see. All right, next we have Temperance. And we have fire and almost ice. Fire and ice, or fire and crystals. Flame and crystals, earth and fire. Really interesting energy there. And this sort of almost balance beam. One's walking between those two extremes. This is a very intense devil card. You definitely get this idea of sort of female mysteries or women's mysteries through this deck, and definitely a lot of that sort of darker crone energy. I really enjoy tower depictions like this, where you see sort of some depiction of ego or of self that's being obliterated, because really when we're in those tower experiences, often that's what's happening. It's our preconceived ideas, it's our own personal experiences, it's our internal structures that are actually being torn asunder to some degree or another. And I like when the Tower card really shows that internal process, such as this one does, with sort of face or even mask shattering. This is, of course, the same image from the cover of the box here, the star. And I like this idea of being connected to this sort of universal energy. You almost get this feeling of this is, if the sky were a large garment like this, that is, everything's woven together and interconnected. I really enjoy that. The moon. The sun. This is definitely one of those decks that I do believe would be a little slower to work with. You ever get the feeling, there's some decks where I just feel like, I'm going to adjust this again. There's some decks where I just really feel like what's going to happen when I work with it is it's going to be a little deeper, a little slower, cards that I'm going to need to sit with a little longer, that sort of thing. I love this idea of calling for judgment, and I like this idea that you have this dark figure in the back holding up this red cloak, and this makes me feel like, think about the mantle of sovereignty, the mantle of power that we take up when we step into our power or our potential. I really like that image. And then for the world, we have all of these sort of individual figures making up this greater whole. Ace of Wands. A single finger. This makes me think of energy work and intention and directing that intention. The Two of Wands, very much the idea of embarking with this energy or planning for preparing to begin a journey that happens here. And the Three of Wands, we have the cauldron, percolating possibility. The Four of Wands, the beginning of structure, when our idea, our goals have started to take some shape. The Five of Wands. I'm really curious about the guidebook, and I think it's going to be one that I'm going to really enjoy working with. The Six of Wands. This feels a lot more abstract than the other images have to me for some reason. And I know some of them are. Like this one seems a little bit abstract as well, but there's a figure here that's literally on fire, and you can get that idea of sort of competition and the way a project or an idea can get out of hand if you're not keeping an eye on things. But this one, I'm not so sure what's coming to me out of this image. I'd have to sit with that a little longer. The 7, definitely holding one's ground. There's a lot of power in this card with all that red. And you can definitely tell that Ellen Lorenzi Prince uses color symbolically in her decks. And very bold colors. The 8 of Wands. The 9 of Wands. Holding steady even as everything builds up pretty intensely. I wonder if we have 7 here. Yep, we have 7. So again, not again, but that makes me think of the chakras. And then the 10 of Wands, we have this tree that's sort of been knocked down and the sun is rising behind. That's really interesting imagery. The Beast of Wands, I believe, is the page. I think I looked this up when I put this deck back in order. And we have this sort of, this looks like a house cat to me. It may be meant to be a larger wild cat, but it looks like a house cat to me. And the Witch of Wands, who's our knight figure, a very classic goddess shape here coming out of a cone of fire. The Grandmother of Wands. We get that sort of leadership energy here, guiding energy. And then we have the Shadow of Wands as the final card. So I will have to spend some time with the book and learn sort of what the structure is really intended to be. But I like this idea of having in every court card a shadow card. Because I feel like when this would come up for me intuitively, what I see here is actually a barren landscape and smoke in the background, as if you've burnt yourself out, or you've burnt out the project, or the idea has fizzled, that sort of thing. There's something to play with there for sure as far as shadow. Next we're into the cups. We have the Ace of Cups. It's a very pleased look here. The 2 of Cups. I had to look at this card 3 times before I understood what I was looking at. But actually you have a cloaked figure here and a cloaked figure there, and their foreheads are about to touch. And I'm sure that also the imagery that also shows up in the negative space is not entirely an accident here in the 2 of Cups. But it is described, because I had to look this one up when I was flipping through it, it is described in the book as 2 figures who are coming together, making a heart shape with their bodies. The 3 of Cups. I like this because you see multiple figures here, one behind the other, but you can also see a face. There's a mouth, a nose, and eyes closed. The 4 of Cups, on an island alone, perhaps oblivious to the help that's around or the other things that are around. The 5 of Cups. This is interesting because at first glance this looks a little bit like the 5 of Pentacles energy. You almost get this idea of stained glass window, but what I see is somebody who is seeking solace in a time of grief and is turning to their faith for support. And it definitely feels humbled and emotional. Oops. Cards are sliding around. The 6 of Cups. Interesting that they're all potentially pulling from this pool, like as if they've just dipped their bowls in and pulled from this pool of reflection. So much you could work with there. The 7 of Cups. Sounds like Peggy's drawing a bath. Yep, there's the 7 of Cups. I'm not sure what I think about this one, actually. The 8 of Cups. This feels like a very strong no or no more position to me, a very potent enough kind of card. The 9 of Cups. This is one of my favorite cards in the deck, or sorry, in any deck rather, and I'm looking for what I see in this imagery, because it's like the wishes fulfilled card. I would definitely probably have to read the guidebook here because I'm not sure what I'm looking at in this moment, right? It's one of the more abstract images in the deck to me. And then we have our 10 of Cups. This feels like it's pulling into the energy of the star. The Beast of Cups. We have a little frog. The Witch of Cups. We have this figure, sort of a mermaid, just emerging from the water, playing in the water. Definitely very comfortable diving into and being embedded in her emotions. the Grandmother of Cups, who would be our guide or our teacher. I love how compassionate and comforting her body language is here with these three sort of figures or supplicants. And then we have the Shadow of Cups. And you get this idea kind of contrary to the, whereas the Witch of Cups seems very comfortable and confident and capable in the water, which we know is a symbol of our emotions. Here we have in the Shadow of Cups somebody who looks lost and drowned, an overabundance of emotions. So definitely the shadow of that suit for sure. Next we have the Ace of Swords. I love this. This definitely feels like insight or awareness or self-awareness here. Eyes wide open. The Two of Swords. Again, reflection as an aspect of decision making. The Three of Swords. Similar. This feels like a smaller mini, almost like a mini tower experience or like a mini breakthrough. I like this because the Three of Swords, threes are about growth and about expansion. And in the sword suit, we often are learning as a result of perhaps some uncomfortable experiences, perhaps even some unpleasant or painful experiences, but there's still an opportunity to expand and to grow, which we see, I think, symbolized by these beams of light coming out the top of the figure, through and out the top of the figure. In the Four of Swords, we have this windmill. That's really interesting. And in the Five of Swords, definitely a lot of overlapping ideas and points here, there's conflict. Yeah, this suit feels pretty abstract in a lot of the images. The Six of Swords, we're normally looking at sort of moving away from that conflict into a place of peace. I almost wonder if it's like sort of the view from inside the windmill. I don't know, that may be just something that just popped into my head for some reason. Our Seven of Swords. This, if I were to like pull into Rider-Waite-Smith, I would say that each eye sort of represents somebody else's perspective of a situation and how there's different perspectives depending on individual experience. I don't know if that's a stretch or if that's just how my intuition sort of keyed into the imagery. In our Eight of Swords, we have somebody who seems to be holding a very big book. And so you could see almost the idea of being caught up in maybe perhaps boxed in a way by knowledge or boxed in by ideas. Again, I don't know if that's a stretch or if that's just where my intuition went. I'd be really curious to hear your guys' thoughts down below, particularly if you've worked with this deck and you have some feedback to share about how you've interpreted some of these cards. Here we have the Nine of Swords, and we definitely have this idea of sitting on a bed of nails or on some sharp points, you know, being in that place of anxiety. It's very uncomfortable. And then we have our Ten of Swords. Pretty classic Rider-Waite, I think, here. Our Beast of Swords is a raven. Our Witch of Swords seems like a ninja to me, in a way. Definitely prepared to take action. Our Grandmother of Swords. The grandmothers, even in this suit, feel very comforting to me to look at. Again, somebody who's more analytical, still taking care of. I feel like the grandmother's jobs is sort of still to take care of their suit. And then the Shadow of Swords. We have this feeling of being iced off, walled off. In discs, I love this sort of earthy, like, human body here as the idea of sort of blessing or bounty. I love that. In the Two of Discs, we have sort of a deal made or partnership, connection. And in the Three of Discs, working together to a common goal. They have their sights set on the same thing and they're working together. The Four of Discs, we're getting the idea here of a physical home that one's built, that stability, that structure. The Five of Discs. Interesting. I don't even know if this is intentional, but the first thing I thought of was you can't get blood from a stone. Isn't that interesting? I don't even know if that's intended. It's green. I don't know why that's what popped into my head, but interesting that it kind of keyed into that. The Six of Discs. Interesting, because the Six is often about rebalancing, reharmonizing. We get the idea of sort of walking into the light and walking into the dark. There's a... yeah, that's really interesting. I'm really excited to see what how the guidebook impacts my ability to work with this deck, because I feel like this one would, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's one that's going to be easy, if that makes any sense, right out of the gate. The Seven of Discs. Get the idea of journey here, of paths traveled, of history, personal history. The Eight of Discs, again, more structure, but this time that structure feels a lot more, perhaps over the top, which makes sense numerologically. And then the Nine of Discs, we have this establishment of a community or a village. And in the Ten of Discs, there's somebody here who has this sort of seat of power in the household, perhaps like a father figure or grandfather figure. The Beast of Discs is a pig. The Witch of Discs, she does feel very earthy. Oh, look at the Grandmother of Discs. Like, this is so perfect. She's in a kitchen. She's got a bowl of hot soup or food for you. Very classic for pentacles or discs to me. And then in the Shadow of Discs, we have this absence of growth. Nothing is growing. We have a single ant here and a spider, but it's a very desolate landscape. And you get this idea of not having anything, of it being very barren. Really interesting. I'm going to zoom us out. We're going to take a look at the guidebook and a card together and then sort of see what we think after that. But it's there's a lot of cards in here where I felt like they were pretty abstract. I still had some really interesting intuitive hits. Ooh, that shuffles very nicely. So that feels like, it reminds me of, say, the cardstock of my Soul Cards decks, which I've had for a long, long, long time. Other thinner, flexible, glossy decks. Oops. What is that? The Three of Cups that jumped out. Let's do one more shuffle, and then we will consciously pull a card and take a look at the guidebook. So we have, I do like these plain black backs. We have the Eight of Wands. So let's take a look at the guidebook, and then we'll actually I'll put this on the other side so it's less glare. And then we'll take a look at that specific card. So, oh, if we don't spin. So here's, it's still spinning. It really wants to spin, guys. That Eight of Wands, all of its movement. So, oh, that's right. Ellen Lorenzi's Prince, Ellen Lorenzi Prince's website is what I meant to say, is darkgoddesstarot.com, but it's published by arnellart.com, just to clarify that. I think it's interesting that she has the Ace of Wands here on the title page. It's dedicated to Hecate. So some information about the deck. She's got, here we go, there's a guide to color meanings, and I had that feeling that she had worked with the colors pretty intentionally, and I feel like I took a quick flip through at this deck at the book when I first got the deck, so I might have remembered that as well. So I like this. So we have the Major Arcana, and we have what looks like sort of a poem or an invocation kind of energy here, and then we have sort of a description on the right side. Same thing from the Magician. So you're not going to always get images, it looks like. So we have the Fool and the Magician here. And here's the information from the Fool. Here's the information on the Magician. Then we have the Priestess. Oh, I see. So they're going to group them in twos. And then the Empress, same idea. Let's read one of these just so you get a feel for that sort of Major Arcana entry in case it's different in the minors. So for the Empress, which is this figure here, it says, I am your grandmother, the mother of mothers. Come to me, my dear one. Let me hold you in my arms. Tell me how you feel and feel my love. Come to me, my dearest one, for I have loved you from the moment you were born, and I will love you all your life. The Empress is a large, comfortable woman, brown-skinned to signify the earth, life on earth and life made flesh. She gazes lovingly down at her cupped hands in her lap. The glow of green life surrounds them. The green is the generative life force, what pulses through all creation. Her dress is blue for the womb of the sea and the canopy of heaven. This is the grandmother, the mother of all mothers, the source of all miracles and mothering powers. Though the mothering you've received in the past may not have been all you could hope for, the Empress says it's never too late to know true and unconditional love. That's very powerful. Love and joy and creation and peace are all one in her. This is the power that rejoices in you, in your individual and unique life. Though her powers are vast and deep, her creations multiplied, still you are important to her. She sees you and rejoices in your being, in your children and your lovers, in your art and your work, in all that you love. So that's really beautiful. So that's how the Major Arcana is structured. Let's take a look at the Eight of Wands, which is a Minor Arcana card, and see how that is structured. It looks similar and just a little bit shorter. So let's see here. So for the Eight of Wands, it says, I must return what has been given and care, I'm going to move this here, and care for others, care for the seekers. A figure holding a large, showy flower stands ahead and apart from her sisters under a field of stars. The flower represents her gift, her unique self and abilities that she has developed over time into something so beautiful it now serves as an inspiration and example to others. Her face is compassionate and a little weary, to find after so much work that you must do more. But it is a responsibility and a privilege to give back, to share what you hold, what you know, and who you are. The world is waiting for what you have to offer. It's time to show it. Ooh, that's some pretty juicy stuff in here. No wonder. So I think this is definitely going to be a deck that I'm going to really enjoy working with the guidebook with it. The guidebook entries feel very potent and healing and loving and nurturing, which is exactly what I would look for in this nature. I think this would be a wonderful deck in your spiritual practice if you like to work with decks in that way. At the dark moon, for example, when you're working with dark goddess or crone energy, it could also be really wonderful to work with during your moon time if you're still menstruating. It could be a really nice deck to work with whenever you have shadow work to do. It feels like that would be really, really good for that purpose as well. Oh, I love a good satisfying fan. As always, this was really, really fun to share with you guys. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this deck. If you've worked with it, if you plan to work with it, do you plan to pick it up when it gets reprinted? I would love to hear all of that. Let me know in the comments down below. Remember that if you want to book a reading with me, you can do that over at tarot.com. And in the meantime, remember to like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!